Welcome to Voice with Vielka, the podcast dedicated to the ongoing quest for finding how to best teach kids to sing with confidence. I'm your host, Vielka, and I'll share my experiences as a performer, educator, founder, and mother for the last 20 years here in the heart of New York City. Thank you for joining me as I share with you the amazing people, practices, and talking points to help us grow together as singers, educators, entrepreneurs, and human beings. Hi, and welcome to Voice with Vielka. Today, I'm thrilled to announce our awesome guest, Emily DenBleyker. Hailing from South Jersey and now calling the beautiful Seattle her home, Emily's not only a remarkable singer and actor, but also an inspiring voice teacher and vocal coach. With over 20 years of performance experience in musical theater and choral music, Emily's passion for music education shines through in everything she does. Her mission? To make singing accessible to everyone, especially those who believe they can't sing. Emily's academic journey is just as impressive. She graduated magna cum laude with a Bachelor of Arts in Music and Communication Arts from Gordon College. Currently, she's a Master of Arts candidate in voice pedagogy with the Voice Studies Center, University of Wales Trinity Saint David. Join us today as we explore Emily's journey, her love for music, and her dedication to helping others find their voice. Get ready for an inspiring and delightful conversation that continues the conversation that I started with Emily when I met her at the NATS 2024 conference, where she was telling me all about her poster paper presentation she was giving there, and I was instantly intrigued and wanted to learn more because she was talking about beginning singers, adult beginning singers. There was a group voice research element to it, and I just thought this is going to be fantastic for us to dig in deeper and really learn from her. So let's give a warm welcome to Emily DenBleyker. Emily, thank you so much for being here.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so excited to be here. I have like a gazillion questions I want to ask you, more than I definitely know that we already have time for. But why don't we just start by telling the audience a little bit about yourself and really how you got to this point where you were like, this is something I want to research and dig into a bit more around adult beginning singers.
Yeah, so like many, especially young voice teachers, I think, I kind of fell into voice teaching accidentally. After I got my bachelor's degree in music, I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I knew I didn't want a professional career, but I didn't know what to do with this, possibly useless degree that I had. And so I spent a few years kind of figuring things out. I worked in arts administration. I worked as a barista because, Seattle. And I was working as a preschool teacher and taking ballet classes on the side. And I was having a lot of fun. It was really important to me, but I was a preschool teacher. And so it got to a point where I couldn't afford them anymore. So I emailed the school and I said, this is really important to me. But do you have any kind of scholarship or work trade opportunities? These are the skills I have. I can do admin stuff. I guess I know how to sing if that's helpful to you. And they said, we also own a music school and our voice teacher needs to take a leave of absence. Can you fill in for her? And I said, sure, absolutely. And so I just started teaching mainly teens at that music school. And I loved it. I had so much fun. And so I was part of a theater company in Seattle, and I kind of put a call out to them saying, hey, I guess I'm teaching voice lessons now. So anybody who wants to come over and we'll figure this out together. And so I got a couple students that way, and then the pandemic hit. And so everything moved online, and I got some more students, again, through just like a random Facebook post. And this is where those students that I got happened to be what I call adult beginning singers, right? They were people who loved music and loved singing their whole lives, but had never had any kind of formal training. But all of a sudden, everyone has all this free time. And so that's when I really became, I guess, quote unquote, a voice teacher. I was still working as a preschool teacher full time because I was an essential worker during the pandemic. And so I was teaching during the day, teaching infants during the day, teaching voice at night. And then it got to the point where my husband and I decided to move to Portugal. And so I quit my job as a preschool teacher and just went full-time voice teaching. And that was great. It was a lot of fun. I had already been teaching online, so it was just a matter of really adjusting to the time zones instead of any kind of online learning curve. And it was when we were in Portugal that I found out about the International Congress of Voice Teachers Conference in 2022 that was in Vienna. I was like, well, that's only a 2-hour flight from me now, or maybe 3. So we went there, and that's where I realized nobody is talking about these people, this population of singers that I'm really interested in and really passionate about. And so I guess I need to be the change I want to see in the world. And I applied for the Voice Study Center master's degree and was accepted. And so started that in November of 2022. And that's where I really started. I feel like I had a lot of ideas before starting that degree. I had a lot of ideas of how teaching adult beginning singers can be different and how they need to be approached differently than professional level singers or children. But I didn't have any of the technical knowledge or research skills to really articulate that. And so that's what I've been doing for the past 2 years with them. I have 1 year left in my degree. Cannot wait. It has been wonderful. And also, master's degrees are long and hard. And so yeah, that's kind of how I got here. The paper that I presented at NATS as a poster paper was the first paper that I wrote for my master's degree. And it kind of came about where I was like, I want to talk about adult beginning singers, but I don't know how. I don't know what to say about them. So I just started reading everything. And I noticed that a lot of the research that was discussing these adult beginning singers and kind of the environmental aspects of teaching them and how they need to be perhaps approached differently, that kind of research was coming out of the group singing research. And so that's how this paper kind of came about.
Well, I love so many things about your story. It's really, really interesting to me just how the road is always windy, right? It's never a linear line. Linear line seems repetitive, but you get my drift. To figuring out sort of what is your calling and what's speaking to you. And I really appreciate how I think a lot of people, a lot of us, we sort of intuitively learn as we are gaining experience. But I think it's really interesting and helps refine our thinking and make it more clear when we share it in a way where you're doing the research and people are starting to write about it and really give names and labels and ideas a spotlight where there hasn't been before. So kudos to you. What's something that makes you passionate about the adult beginning singers? Why does this group speak to you?
The most interesting thing that I've encountered with adult beginning singers is it's not just about singing, right? There is a paper written by Louise Pascal, and she says that singing is not a neutral subject, right? Everyone has opinions about singing. And this is really what we run into with adult beginning singers is that, you have a professional level singer, they've probably been singing their whole lives, or a lot of them. They identify as a singer, they know what to do. These adult beginning singers don't identify as singers. A lot of the time, they think they cannot sing. They've had a lot of experiences that they believe have shown them that they don't deserve to be heard. And to share their voices. And so we are not only dealing with technical issues like any other voice teacher, we are working through the psychological issues that then influence the technique. And I just think that's really exciting. And they are so open to experimenting, even when it's not comfortable. I think with professional level singers, you ask them to make a weird noise, and they're like, okay, that's weird, but sure, here we go, right? But it takes a lot more, I don't want to say convincing, but it takes a lot more roundabout ways to get people to be comfortable in their bodies and with their voice. And I think that everyone deserves to be that comfortable and to feel, I keep using the word comfortable, but comfortable sharing their voice. And so that's really what intrigued me about it.
I love it. And from my perspective, first off, I do teach adult beginning singers. So it is part of who I work with, and I love that population for very similar reasons. I feel like the breakthroughs that can come through finding your voice right? And
Yeah.
owning your voice are just unlike other things in my experience. So I love
And it
that.
also, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but it also spills over into other aspects of life too. I've had emails from people who say, you know what, I had to present in a meeting today and I felt so much more comfortable talking in front of people. And that's not even singing, that's just, talking. So that's really exciting to see.
Oh, 100%, because your voice is your voice, whether you're speaking or you're singing, and to feel like you can own it and control it is such a different experience. And certainly, I think one of the dynamics that we sort of share between the adult beginning singers that you're focused on and the kid population that we're mostly focused on is the fact that they're beginning and that they tend the adult beginning singers, which I saw was in the paper, what you wrote about, and I know what we've talked about, and certainly what I've experienced is that so many adult beginning singers have an experience at a young age that then defines the trajectory of how they think of themselves as a singer or non-singer. And
Absolutely.
so for me, that's one of many reasons, also with the life skills and all the other benefits of why don't we really set up young voices in a way where it's healthy habits from the start and really giving them the tools that they need so that they can own their voice, find their voice, do all their things so that they reap the benefits from the very beginning.
For
But
sure.
I'd love to dive in a little bit more into sort of how we go about that. And I know you had sort of this three-pronged approach, you call it. Yeah, I mean, it's each part of that is so rich and full. But maybe let's start, start at the beginning. Maybe talk about the can't sing choir. I thought that was so
Yeah.
cool.
This came out of a paper, I believe it's from 2003. I'm picturing the citation in my brain. It's Richardson Durant, 2003, and they studied a quote unquote can't sing choir in, I believe it was London or in the UK, where it was people who thought they couldn't sing, wanted to learn how to sing, and they formed a choir. And the conductor was both a voice, she filled the roles of both like a voice instructor and a traditional conductor role. Um, and the thing that I really enjoyed about her approach specifically is that she just let people sing, and she helped them develop skills along the way, but there was no like, you're a little flat, could you just mouth that bit for a minute, right? um, they say that when she would begin to lead warm-ups, she would let people start on whatever pitch they wanted, right? They are just waking up their voice, figuring out what singing feels like, which is a whole like subset of this. Is we don't think about it that much, but ooh, singing feels wild sometimes. Um, and so she just got people used to making noise in front of other people and not worrying about if it is correct or not. And then she would help them match pitch, gain those more technical skills, still in a group, and because there weren't like videos of this, I can't confirm exactly how, and it's been a minute since I've read this paper, but she would use hand signals. She'd have everyone make noise. She'd go stand next to someone and either go like, ooh, up a little bit, there you go. Right? So that they still have that anonymity of everyone else's voices around them, but they still were getting that individual instruction and practice.
I
So
love
that
that.
was the Can't
Yeah,
Sing Choir. Yeah.
I love that. So, yeah, and I think what really struck me was how she went about building self confidence through this atmosphere where there was no judgment, mistakes are welcome, and one of the quotes telling them, you can't be wrong,
Exactly.
just putting it out there, which is
Yeah.
so empowering. So, the three pronged approach for creating a supportive learning environment that you found was promoting self efficacy and agency, focusing on participation instead of presentation, and balancing risk and safety. I know there's a lot to
Yes.
unpack there. Let's
These
talk
could each be
about,
their own dissertation. It
oh,
was so hard to get this
100%.
all on the one poster. Whew.
Yeah, it's a lot. Just saying some of these words is a mouthful. So maybe we could start by unpacking a few of them. So,
Yes.
self-efficacy. How would you describe what that means in this context?
This is at its most basic understanding. This is basically believing that you have the skills to achieve something. So when we're talking about self-efficacy in singing, it is believing that when I open my mouth and make a sound, it is the sound that I intend to make, right? What is coming out of my mouth matches what is happening in my brain. And this is what we see with a lot of beginning singers, where singing is a learned skill. And for some people, if you are not given the chance to develop that skill as a child, you do not have the self-efficacy because you never got the chance to make a lot of silly noises and figure out, okay, if I do this, it sounds like this. And if I do this, it sounds like this. And so it really helps, connect what is happening in the brain versus what is coming out of the mouth. Um,
Yeah, and I think what struck me about this first point is that a lot of it's really mental, right? The way
Absolutely.
I'm reading it is that self-efficacy is really, I think I can.
Hmm.
I think I
Hmm.
can. And the agency is that, and I'm allowed to, slash, this is a, well, I know safe space is sort of coming up, but I feel like it's related too, right? That sense of agency is maybe dependent on the environment.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. Um, the environment that I am in is not structured in a way that prevents me from doing what I want, right? I feel supported in going about things the way that I want to.
Yeah. So we talked about the Can't Sing Choir and how
Yes.
she was able to create that sort of agency and self-efficacy there. Um, and then in your paper, you dig into the four sources of self-efficacy in music education. I was like, wow, there are like formal names for this. Am
Yeah.
I the only one to react that way? I don't know. But I was like, that's really cool. So here are the names: enactive mastery experiences, vicarious experience, verbal persuasion, and physiological and affective states. So, breaking this down a little bit: enactive mastery experiences, the wins,
Hmm.
basically, right?
Yeah. It is feeling like you have achieved something. Oh, hey, that is the sound that I meant to come out of my mouth. Wow. Right? That's all that is. Yeah.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's this idea of success building on success, and
Yes.
that you want to really highlight even the tiniest things, that you don't have to wait for a big thing, right? And how that's going to be impactful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then talk to us about vicarious experience and how that has translated in this sort of group singing atmosphere and then borrowing from there into the private studio.
Hmm. So vicarious experiences are watching someone else succeed. And this one can be a little bit tricky because it has been shown that people watching other people perform at a higher level than them, that actually depletes their self-efficacy. They say, oh, well, I could never sound like that. Sure, you are not them. You are not going to sound like them, you know?
And probably
And
I'm guessing that it's too far from where they're at. Like if they're the beginner, it's
exactly.
so far that it's like very clear and they're not wrong, right? I can't
Hmm.
do that right now. And if we're
Yeah.
trying to stay in that, I think I can,
Hmm.
that the target's going to be where for them.
Absolutely, exactly. And so, with these vicarious experiences, it's really important that the singer observing is at a similar level or maybe just below the singer that is performing, because then they can be inspired by. And this is where I really like, we'll talk about recitals in a second because that is kind of part of the second point. But recitals in my studio, because most of my students are adult beginning singers, they can really have like, oh, these people are on the same level as me. We are all just here to achieve our own personal goals, but like we're all in this together. And so those vicarious experiences can really bolster a sense of community, which I think is also important. I didn't get to talk about that in this paper. um, but those vicarious experiences really show them like other people are in this with you, right? And you can achieve. And we are all on our own journey, facing our own technical battles, right? We see a lot of the same stuff come up, but never to the same degree in the same combination from person to person. And so those vicarious experiences can really show them what it looks like across boundaries, I guess.
Maybe tell us tell us more about the recitals that you're talking about and how that plays into it.
So, because I was living overseas and because I teach online and my students are all over the US, I do virtual online recitals where the people who choose to participate pre-record videos, send them to me, I edit everybody's together, and then we get together on Zoom and watch everything together. And the thing that I really like about this is that people get so creative with their videos, right? And of course, we have people just stand there and sing and they're still having an incredible time and they sound lovely. But I've had people do full music videos. I had one student one time code an AI animation to what she pictured was happening during her song. It was absolutely incredible. And so you get this secondary level of these people are all learning to sing on their own journeys, and this is how they express it differently. And so that is, it's my favorite. It's a medium amount of work for me to put together. I've learned a lot about video editing, but it is so, so, so worth it.
Oh, I love it so much. And I have to say, we do virtual recitals as well because basically we teach online internationally and then we have in person in New York City. But the virtual recitals, when we started during the pandemic, it felt so amazing to be able to just bring people together.
Yes.
At a time when we really couldn't be physically together. And at the time we used Facebook Live, which has since no longer become an option. But what I loved about it was that the pre-recorded videos were playing like a movie, but everyone was online in real time and you could comment and send hearts and things in real time.
Yes.
So that was really cool. I haven't done the Zoom, like live Zoom with the videos yet, but I think that is what we're going to do this year because I miss the live participatory element of sharing. Although I do, in the paper they talk about, and you talk about the videos being a nice option for beginners, and maybe share a moment about why that is that a video is helpful when we're talking about how to create this environment that's really friendly for beginners.
I do not make participation mandatory for my recitals, perhaps obviously for everything I'm talking about. But I have several students who would not and have not participated when I offered live recitals, but have participated in video recitals. And it's because they are just learning how to sing for fun, and getting up and singing in front of people is scary. And so it's not going to motivate them the way it would motivate someone whose goal it is to be a professional performer. And so even as I am back in the US, in Seattle, I'm going to always offer at least a virtual option for these recitals so that everyone feels like they have the agency, a structure that supports them, to participate on their own terms in a way that makes them excited to participate instead of saying, everyone's live now, surprise. And also, I couldn't do that because most of my students are in Seattle, but I have students in Chicago and on the East Coast. And so it just is physically impossible to be able to do that. And so I think this hybrid option is really exciting for people with students in multiple locations and for people with students of differentiated goals and motivations, really.
It's so funny. I don't know if you had this experience since you have a strong musical theater background, which is stage and therefore live. But I had such a background of being on stage that it took me like years to realize, oh wait, there's that whole recording artist thing where you don't have to actually be performing live on stage in front of a live audience, which is so different, right? Mm-hmm. And very much like, it's a lot of pressure when you know that literally everyone's eyes are on you and that inevitably there's going to be something that's a little off, that goes wrong. There are so many elements to it, right? So to have something that's a little bit more of a controlled setting that you can record, re-record. Yeah, I love that we can offer so many options and still include it in a live recital. Like we just did a hybrid recital so that for people who were in the virtual recital where it was just all the videos strung together essentially, that in our on-stage recital that we also had a screen so we could bring in people who weren't there in a live setting. But
Yeah,
it's been really
absolutely.
fun to think about how else to go about it and expand it. I thought it was interesting that you had a sentence in there that said it's more common for teachers to discuss, I guess, musical performance anxiety, reduction skills, like how to ease the anxiety, only after the student has experienced it, rather than to introduce the skills as a preventative measure. And I think I immediately could relate because I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, because you kind of have to get to the point where you're ready to perform or you are performing to then be like, oh yeah. And it took me a lot of years to be like, hey, let's troubleshoot a few things.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, especially for beginning singers, beginning adult singers, is there a conversation that you have? Is this something that comes up? Or do you feel like because you're structuring it in a way where there's less overall, it's not something because it's not really the focus to be performing?
It's both and because I see a lot of music performance anxiety in lessons, right? Teachers are audiences, and I think that we forget that sometimes. And it's
I feel like we need
they're
to pause there,
so
Emily.
scary.
I just went like, oh, like that was like a mic drop moment for me. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And that says so much about how long I've been in it, right? And I
And
feel like, right? Like, oh my God, of course. Just coming to the lesson, just showing up is so scary, or it can be.
And this is a huge thing with adult beginning singers, and this is something that I really want teachers to really think about, is that we're so used to it, right? We show up to a lesson, we give them all of our money. It's just what we do, right? But for some people, showing up to a lesson with someone whose job it is to know what you are doing wrong is so scary. And not all teachers are nice. And I've had students come to me after they went to a lesson and got absolutely just like demolished by a teacher. And they want someone who can give constructive criticism, right? Along with everything else, and not just be like, oh, well, this is what we need to work on. This is what we need to work on. This is what we need to work on, right? And so I think for adult beginning singers, everyone experiences performance anxiety in different ways. And so, of course, there are overlaps like feeling short of breath or being really shaky or singing really quiet. Any combination of these things and other things that we can't even think of. Acknowledging like, yeah, hey, super normal, right? I tell people that all the time is take your time, when you're ready. We can also adjust this in a way that makes it feel a little bit more comfortable for you. If you want to mute yourself and try it by yourself first where I can't hear it, so you can get those inactive mastery experiences and that self-efficacy going before you show it to anyone. Super, super helpful and really important. Yeah.
Wow, I love that idea of like mute, take a moment, and then come back. That's
Hmm.
interesting because historically we haven't had that option.
Right. And of course,
That is pretty cool.
it wouldn't necessarily work in a live lesson, but there could be a version of like, I'm going to ignore you for a second, right? You can sing into your hands to muffle yourself, right? You can hum it, thinking through it. Heidi Moss talks a lot about like that. I'm forgetting the technical term now, but practicing it in your head. And they've shown that the muscles of the larynx adjust even when you're thinking about it. And so you're getting that muscular coordination practicing. And then when you're ready, you let me know and we'll run it for real.
Let me tell you, that mental practice piece is astounding. And I
Yes.
mean, that will have to be its own separate podcast because it is incredible that you can, without making any sound, be mentally rehearsing and it's almost as effective as actually doing the thing itself.
Hmm.
and making the sound, in this case was singing. But that's another way of sort of just muting. And it's also, I did this probably within the last month, so it's fresh in my mind, that with one of my students, I was like, you know what, just take a moment, see if you can mentally rehearse it and get it in your
Yeah.
mind. And I could watch, and they were lip syncing and doing it, and I could see they didn't get it because it actually starts there, right? And I guess this goes back to the self-efficacy of believing that
Yes.
you can, and then seeing yourself do it. And then part of it is mechanical of like, okay, maybe they're still not sure exactly how, and that's why there's a little bit of a gap there. Oh, we could talk all day about that.
Yeah.
But as we were going through that example, I think we hit upon one of the other points here, which was the verbal persuasion, which is basically, yeah, I mean, tell us, what does that mean in just like lay terms? And the fact that
Yeah.
what I thought was interesting was there was a line here about it's the fastest way to help a student's self-efficacy flourish because it can happen in the moment, but it's not as effective for long lasting as other methods. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. Verbal persuasion is just saying, hey, nice job. You did it. Congratulations. And I think we say that all the time. There's also a paper that I cited in my paper from this year, um, investigating which sources of self efficacy are most used by voice teachers. And voice teachers most often use the verbal persuasion, and I'm forgetting the other one. We'll get there. I think maybe enactive mastery experiences, just the repetition, right? But it is not as long lasting, right? You hear somebody say, "Hey, nice job," and that like dings for a second, but then the next time you don't perhaps perform successfully or do something the way you wanted it to be, that kind of weighs on you a little bit more. And so it cannot be the only thing that we use to encourage students and help them develop their self efficacy.
Is there a way that you feel like is the most impactful based on all the research and your experience?
You know what? It really has not been researched that much. And this is something that I would really love to get into. I have to come up with a dissertation topic pretty soon. So maybe it's this. Um, but we really don't know which is the most effective. There's no kind of resource for, hey, here are the four sources, and here are methods that we could use for to help develop each source. I think that would be incredibly helpful for teachers. Um, what was your question?
Yeah, no, yeah. But I think that there is a path that you're laying out here, even if we don't have all the research to show which works and which one's the most
Right.
impactful, like the building on the wins, right? And having those mastery experience and active mastery experiences.
Hmm.
And then definitely verbalizing. And also, I thought it was interesting about the students' internal thought patterns and
Yes.
sort of their own verbal persuasion and whether or not that's happening, which we can't see. So that means that as teachers, I'm curious, is that an area that you have started to explore in your practice?
I really try my darndest. I'm just a human. I don't succeed every time, but you can see when somebody is not fully convinced
Yeah.
about something, right? And people will show this in different ways. And so it's really a matter of knowing your students. But some people just shut down and start going, uh huh, yeah, I got it. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. You know? And some people will just like make faces, you know? And so I'll tell my students a lot of time, I'm like, your words are saying that you feel good about this, but your face and your body language are not. So can we dig into this a little bit more? Can you say a little bit more about what you're feeling? Um, and that is really helpful. But because with all of these sources of self efficacy, the different sources are going to hit different with different people, right? Some people are going to really respond to vicarious experiences. Some people are really going to need a lot of psychological support, right? And kind of digging into like the why is this hard? And so it's really hard to say like, oh yes, this is the formula, right? And so you really need to kind of like have a relatively thorough understanding of all of these so that you can pick and choose and adjust for any given person on any given day, right? We don't wake up feeling the same way every single day. Some days I really need validating words, and some days I really just need to like cry for a second and then we can keep going, right? And so it's that flexibility and not having just one method that we rely on that is really the most important.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's part of the love of this art is that each person is a unique expression and everyone's always changing too. So it's a constant challenge to create this space and interaction in a way that's going to help both parties grow in a really positive way so that they're both blossoming, the teacher
Yeah.
and the student.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not that I'm looking just for an easy answer and to just get there. I think I truly do believe that like the journey is the destination. Like it's
Yes,
super,
absolutely.
yeah, it's an amazing road to go on. And it's so exciting to see that these beginner adults are courageous enough to do it because I feel like it does take a lot of courage to just show
It
up.
does. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see here. I'm looking at the time. I know I have to be mindful. I also am looking at all my questions. Oh my gosh, I loved Sherwood's table of questions for voice teachers to evaluate their teaching through a student-centered lens.
Yes.
And just the definition of student-centered pedagogy. The planning, teaching, and assessment revolve around the needs and abilities of the students. And that seems so obvious in a way, and yet I think it's really interesting how you point out that that philosophy is actually distinct and different from the master apprentice model that has been there for singers for such a long time. Do you want to maybe take a moment and talk about that shift?
Um, so this is Sherwood's whole paper is examining the master apprentice approach and moving it more toward a student-centered approach. And so he would be much more able to speak in depth about this. Um, but I think this is one of the benefits we have from being in the private studio instead of in a more formal university, for example, setting, is that we don't have to have people hit levels. They don't have to have X number of songs in French and X number of songs in German, etc. We can do whatever we want. And I think people forget that sometimes, right? Is that a lot of times students will be working toward a specific goal. We'll be working on one song for a few weeks in a row. But also sometimes they show up and they're like, listen, I am not feeling this song today. Incredible. Let's not sing that song today. We are still moving and grooving and learning. And what is, hitting your soul today? Let's sing that song because we can still work on all of these technical issues. And it's just meeting students where they are at. And I think that one idea is kind of the rock in a pond that the ripples have effects on so many other areas of voice pedagogy. And I think maybe that is just like the thesis statement of my entire research and pedagogical like philosophy is just see where a person is at a certain day, also know where they're kind of wanting to go long term and make it up from there. Our job as teachers is to have such a thorough understanding of voice science and voice performance and pedagogical techniques that we can adjust on a dime. That's not the student's job. That's our job. Student-centered pedagogy is just what it sounds like. And again, Sherwood goes into much more detail about it. And he has, like you said, this whole set of questions for teachers to ask themselves that basically boil down to, am I asking the student to do this thing for themselves and their own personal development, or because it's what I want them to do, right? And I actually think this is something that I learned subconsciously when I was teaching toddlers as a preschool teacher, because you're not going to get a toddler to do anything that they don't want to do. And so once you realize, okay, this is the task that I want you to achieve, you are doing it differently than the way I would do it. However, is your body safe and are you still getting similar end goals? Great, we're here, you know. So that is student-centered pedagogy.
Oh, I love that so much. And I love that you brought in sort of the lessons from the toddlers, because I do have this belief that, everything I needed to learn, I learned in kindergarten, that expression that there is, that's how it is for a teacher. It's about sort of teaching kindergarten or teaching preschool even. Even better is that when you are able to be a guide and have a clear goal that you know is going to serve the student or serve, the child, and do it in a way where they're engaged, they're excited, it's fun, all the things. Because you're right, you're not going to just like make it happen, and they're not going to want to just do what you want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So,
maybe you can convince adults to do what you want to do, but they're going to hate you for it, right?
right,
So this
right.
comes back to the agency piece, right? Is letting people kind of do, like, having everything structured so that people can do things more or less the way that they want.
I love how you really define the role of the voice teacher as being a guide and being able to change on a dime and really just show up for your student. So that's so awesome. As we start to wind down, which I'm sad because I feel like we could just, have a retreat somewhere, do coffee, dinner, keep talking.
Great. I'm
um,
in.
yeah, right. Me too. Yeah. Any points that I missed that you feel would be really helpful for teachers to know or be thinking about from what you've learned from all of this?
We didn't touch on the last point of the three prongs, which I think is overarching and still very important. And it's just the idea that a safe environment is so important. Of course, like, we know that intellectually, but sometimes practically, it can get a little muddy. And especially with adult beginning singers, a safe environment is not always a comfortable environment, and that's okay. Singing, again, it goes back to the singing is not a neutral subject, like Pascal said. Um, they are going to feel ways about singing, but they are motivated to try it anyway, but it's going to be uncomfy. And that's okay, right? And let them know it's okay if it's a little weird, right? We can adjust it so that it is the least uncomfy that it can be, but it still might be a little weird. But this is still a safe place. I'm not here to judge you. People cry all the time. And so, give them space to have those big feelings. Then we come back and we talk about it and we say, all right, how do we move forward from here? And so that is so important.
Is there something you do to set up that level of safety when you begin? Because, for you and I talking about voice lessons, I know exactly what you're talking about. We're going to cry, there's going to be frustration, there's going to be all kinds of emotions that come up on this journey. But for someone who's never done it and they show up, they don't know.
I think
They may
just,
have no idea.
yeah, absolutely. I think acknowledging that it is scary and that I know it's scary and I am here to support you. And I also tell my students, I tell them, I grew up in Jersey. You're not going to offend me. Tell me no. I don't care. Or swear if you need to, right? Or yell, whatever you need to keep moving forward. That's what we're going to do. And so I think that really, when the teacher acknowledges that, like, it's kind of weird to sing in front of another human being, right? I think that that is a good first step in saying, we'll figure it out, right?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I asked you to put together a mini playlist, and you did. So
This
on
was
your
so
list,
hard.
I know it's really, I feel like I should probably just stop, but it's kind of cool to see people's answers.
Yeah.
But it's so hard for any musician, I feel like. And so just think of it as a moment in time, on the day that you put this together, your mini playlist
Yep.
of 5 songs you chose. Keep the Customer Satisfied by Simon and Garfunkel, Ghosts by Lydia Ramsey, Rebel Girl, Rebel, oh my gosh, Rebel Girl, Bikini Kill, Agnus Dei from Haydn's Mass in C Major, and Keep Marching from Suffs, the musical. What does this tell us about you, or say, how is it a reflection of you in these songs? If you had to sum it up.
And that's what I tried to achieve with this is kind of bringing together all of the aspects of me. So going through Simon and Garfunkel are my all-time favorite artists. They were always playing in the house when I was growing up. We didn't play Christmas music in my house. We played Simon and Garfunkel full volume when we made Christmas cookies. And so I just keep the customer satisfied. I'm happy every time it comes on. So that was the entire philosophy behind that. Ghosts by Lydia Ramsey. She is a Seattle folk artist who is just honestly one of the most incredible artists I've ever seen live. And so all of her albums, highly recommend. I had to pick one song, so I picked that one, but like the whole album is incredible. Rebel Girl by Bikini Kill. I love Riot Girl Punk. I sound like such a nerd when I say that, but I just love some music that lets women yell. We don't get to do that very often.
Wow.
And so when I need to feel empowered, I listen to Rebel Girl. The Agnus Dei from Haydn's Paukenmesse makes me cry every time because it's a mass, and this is I believe the last part of it, and it begins with timpani, and it is supposed to represent the canons coming closer and closer to the church. This mass is also called the Mass in Time of War, and so I just think it evokes an emotional space so much. And then the last one, what was the last one? Oh, Keep Marching from Suffs. I am a musical theater kid at heart. I saw Fiddler on the Roof when I was 3, and I said, that's for me. And so it was so hard to choose one musical theater song, but like you said, it is kind of the moment that we are in. Suffs has been slapping recently. I love it so much. I really hope to be able to see it in New York when I'm there this fall. And Keep Marching, I think, just does an incredible job telling that story.
Amazing. Emily, you have to come visit me when you come.
Yeah.
You know that, right? Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to get to do our coffee. I'm so excited. Awesome. Okay. Rapid fire. First word that comes to mind. There is no wrong. Just like put it out there. You're going to fill in some blanks and just answer some quick questions. Singing is blank.
A learned skill.
Teaching is blank.
A different skill than singing.
You're nervous walking on stage. What's the first thing you do?
Take a deep breath and then remember all of the people that I have rooting for me behind the scenes.
Love that. You're home alone. What piece do you love to perform when no one's listening?
Any of the things on the playlist that we just talked about,
Yeah.
but especially some Simon and Garfunkel. Yeah.
What's an example of something ordinary that you find extraordinary that you're grateful for?
Singing. It's so normal, but we make such a big deal out of it. And that's, I get it. And also so silly. It's just silly face noises, right?
Yeah. And we're celebrating you, and the sky's the limit. How do you want to celebrate?
I just want to, living overseas, I have been pretty homesick for the last 2 years. So I just want to have a house party with all of the people that I've missed for the past couple years. They don't even have to pay attention to me. I just like seeing everyone together and having fun.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love it. Emily, it has been such a joy, such a treat to have you here sharing with us everything that you've been learning, and your journey with us has just been awesome. Teachers can learn and find more out about you at Emily DB, as in DenBleyker. DenBleyker. EmilyDB.com. So go there, check it out. Emily, thank you so much. This has been joy, and truly do look me up. Let's make plans for September.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Suffs. Did you already get tickets?
No.
Okay.
I have to make, okay, listen, here's the truth is I have to make one more grad school payment. And so we're on a budget right now.
Got it. Well, I feel like there are ways that people do that in New York City. So we'll figure it out.
I'll figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to let you go, teach, and enjoy. Thanks again. Really loved having you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me for this podcast. To learn more about my step-by-step approach to voice education, where I've consolidated 30 years of vocal study into 4 words even a 3-year-old can do, just go to www.vielka.com. That's Vielka.com. Happy singing.